Every great story needs a setting, but the stage upon which Rome's first emperors rose was a landscape of political violence and moral decay. We often imagine the Roman Republic as an unbreakable fortress of senatorial virtue, where dictators were temporary saviors and kings were figures of ancient, shameful myth. But by the 1st century BC, the Republic was a hollow shell, its institutions choked by greed, its armies loyal only to cash and charismatic generals, and its streets perpetually stained by the blood of political rivals. This was not a system that collapsed under the weight of foreign invasion. It was a structure that rotted from the inside, collapsing beneath the colossal weight of its own success and the boundless ambition of its elite. For nearly 5 centuries, Rome had been ruled by a delicate, if often violent, balance. The Senate, representing the elite aristocracy, and the people, represented by the tribunes. The most sacred law was the annual rotation of power. No one man, no matter how gifted, could hold ultimate authority for long. This fear of a permanent king was etched into the Roman soul. Yet in less than 100 years, this ingrained fear would be annihilated, replaced by the tyranny of monarchy, and it was all orchestrated by a single, intertwined family, the Julio-Claudians. This dynasty, a brilliant merger of 2 ancient bloodlines, was not founded on royal decree or divine conquest, but on the ultimate irony. The man who created the empire was the man who claimed to restore the Republic. From the legendary rise of Julius Caesar to the insane collapse under Nero, their story is the definitive template for the rise and fall of absolute power. They are the architects who built the imperial palace, but they were also the men who buried the Republic deep beneath its foundations. They ruled for less than a century, yet in that time, they irrevocably transformed the world. This is the saga of the families who built and then nearly broke Rome. We begin not with an emperor, but with a goddess, and a claim to power that preceded the Republic itself. We begin with the divine pedigree of the Julian clan. To comprehend the political maneuverings of the Julii, one must understand the currency of ancient Roman status. It was not enough to be rich or successful. One had to possess auctoritas, a mystical blend of moral authority, personal prestige, and historical gravitas. The gens Julii, the Julian clan, possessed this in abundance, rooted in a mythological claim that transcended mere human nobility. The Julii proudly asserted direct descent from Ilus, also known as Ascanius, the son of the Trojan hero Aeneas. Aeneas, in turn, was the direct offspring of the Roman goddess of love, Venus. This was not ancient history. It was a potent, living political weapon wielded by the family to set themselves apart from the mere mortal aristocracy. When a Julian spoke of his ancestors, he was essentially claiming kin with the immortal gods. For centuries, this divine claim was used subtly. The Julii were prominent, producing magistrates and consuls, but they rarely dominated Roman politics. They understood the long game, maintaining their prestige while other great families rose and inevitably fell. This measured approach allowed them to endure the vicious political feuds that plagued the Republic. However, by the late 2nd and early 1st century BC, the delicate constitutional machinery of Rome had been overwhelmed by the rise of private armies. The Republic was being consumed by men like the conservative firebrand Sulla and the popularist hero Gaius Marius, men who used prescriptions and mass murder to enforce their will. The political atmosphere was a brutal pressure cooker. It demanded a leader with immense wealth, military genius, and a powerful name. The old systems of governance were simply too slow and too fragmented to rule an empire that now stretched across the entire Mediterranean. The stage was set, the audience was ready for a strongman, and the Julii, with their goddess-given pedigree, were about to deliver the man who would take the political violence of the era and elevate it to the art of the state. The Julian line was about to produce the first political superstar of the ancient world, a man whose ambition would forever change the definition of power. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar did not wait for power to find him. He seized it with both hands, using his noble name as a launchpad for ruthless self-promotion. From his earliest career as a daring military tribune to his stint as Pontifex Maximus, the chief high priest, Caesar cultivated an image that appealed to both the elite and the masses. He knew how to play the game, but more importantly, he knew when to cheat. His masterstroke was the formation of the first triumvirate in 60 BC, a blatantly cynical, entirely extra-legal alliance with Rome's two other political giants, the general Pompey the Great and the financier Marcus Licinius Crassus. Together, they bypassed the corrupt, gridlocked Senate entirely, carving up the Roman world's spoils and patronage among themselves. With his turn at the consulship complete, Caesar demanded and received the governorship of Cisalpine Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, and Illyricum. It was effectively a 10-year license to build an empire. The Gallic Wars, 58 to 50 BC, were Caesar's proving ground, his military masterpiece, and his source of unimaginable wealth. In a series of breathtaking campaigns, he subjugated the vast, untamed territory of Gaul, expanded Rome's borders to the Rhine and the English Channel, and massacred or enslaved hundreds of thousands of people. He wrote his own propaganda, the Commentari de Bello Gallico, commentaries on the Gallic War, ensuring that every Roman citizen was aware of his heroic, godlike achievements. The result was a war machine of veterans loyal to him personally, men who had marched, bled, and grown wealthy under his command. They did not serve Rome, they served Caesar. As Crassus died in battle and Pompey drifted back towards the jealous Senate, the triumvirate dissolved. The Senate, terrified of the general and his legions, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Compliance meant political suicide. Defiance meant civil war. In January 49 BC, Caesar made the irreversible choice. He led his 13th legion across the Rubicon River, the legal boundary of Italy. Alea acta est. He is famously reported to have said, "The die is cast." The act was a declaration that the laws of the Republic were subordinate to his will, plunging Rome into the final, agonizing phase of its civil conflict. Caesar defeated Pompey and the remaining Republican forces in quick succession. He returned to Rome the undisputed master, not merely a temporary dictator, but dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. In every sense but the name, Rome was now a monarchy. His revolutionary reforms, redistribution of land, citizenship extensions, the Julian calendar, were the actions of a benevolent, absolute ruler. But to the old guard, the dictator's purple robe was indistinguishable from a king's crown. The only question left was how the Republic would die. The man who had dismantled the Republic through superior generalship and political genius was now untouchable. But in Rome, ambition always breeds resentment. To the senators who valued their ancient privileges, Caesar's perpetual dictatorship was an intolerable affront, a tyranny that threatened to permanently extinguish the flame of liberty. They saw themselves not as murderers, but as heroes upholding 5 centuries of tradition. The conspiracy was led by Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, men whom Caesar had previously pardoned and promoted. They were driven by a misguided conviction that if the tyrant was removed, the Republic would simply spring back to life. It was a profound failure to understand the depth of the rot in the system and the loyalty Caesar had secured outside the marble halls of the Senate. On the Ides of March, 44 BC, Caesar entered the theater of Pompey for a Senate meeting. The conspirators, hidden amongst his friends and colleagues, surrounded him and struck. 23 stab wounds ended the life of the greatest Roman of his age. The assassins, their hands dripping with blood, marched into the Forum, proclaiming freedom and the restoration of the Republic. The city did not cheer. It froze in fear, quickly dissolving into chaos and confusion. The assassins' folly was immediately apparent. They had killed the tyrant, but failed to kill the tyranny, or, critically, Caesar's lieutenants and supporters. Mark Antony, Caesar's consul and most trusted ally, galvanized the masses at Caesar's funeral, reading the dictator's will and displaying his bloody cloak. The crowd, enraged by the sight and the revelation that Caesar had left a significant portion of his wealth to the Roman people, turned into a mob. The conspirators were forced to flee Rome, their attempt to save the Republic having achieved the exact opposite, the final, irreversible plunge into civil war. It was into this volatile, blood-soaked void that the next great Julian stepped. He was a frail, inexperienced young man, a grandnephew whom Caesar had secretly adopted in his will. His name was Gaius Octavius, and he was the future of Rome. He was only 18 years old, but he carried the most powerful weapon in the world, the name of Caesar. His arrival would set the stage for a showdown with Mark Antony, an experienced general who saw the boy as an annoyance. That misjudgment would cost Antony the world. The young Octavius was not physically imposing, nor was he initially a gifted commander, but he possessed a chilling, singular focus and an uncanny ability to judge character and seize political opportunity. He rejected all advice to moderate his ambitions. He demanded his inheritance, the legions, the funds, and the legendary name of Caesar. His rise is a textbook case in political transformation. Octavian quickly rallied Caesar's veterans and secured the grudging support of the Senate, which foolishly believed they could use the young man to neutralize the more powerful Mark Antony. Instead, Octavian forced the Senate's hand, establishing the Second Triumvirate, a legally sanctioned dictatorship with Antony and Lepidus. The immediate goal was vengeance. The triumvirs issued the proscriptions, eliminating over 300 senators and 2,000 businessmen. It was a brutal, industrial-scale purge that wiped out the last generation of Republican leadership and filled the treasury. This blood money paved the way for the new regime. With the assassins, Brutus and Cassius, finally defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, the Republic was truly dead. The triumvirs then divided the Roman world. Antony took the rich east, Octavian took the powerful west, and Lepidus was marginalized. The inevitable final contest was now between the two giants, Octavian and Antony. Antony, based in Egypt, forged an indelible political and romantic alliance with Queen Cleopatra VII. This alliance was the final key Octavian needed. He launched a masterful propaganda campaign, painting Antony not as a rival general, but as a traitor corrupted by foreign Eastern luxury, seeking to move the capital to Alexandria and enslave Rome to an Egyptian queen. This narrative resonated deeply with the Roman public, who viewed the Eastern monarchies with suspicion. The final conflict was settled at the naval battle of Actium in 31 BC. Octavian's forces, led by the brilliant general Agrippa, utterly routed the fleets of Antony and Cleopatra. The pair fled to Egypt and committed suicide a year later. Octavian returned to Rome. His true genius, however, was revealed in his next move. he learned the lesson of his adoptive father. Absolute power invites assassination. Instead of declaring himself king, he performed a political miracle. In 27 BC, he went before the Senate and publicly restored the Republic, resigning his extraordinary powers. The Senate, filled with his terrified loyalists and desperate for peace, begged him to stay, granting him the title Augustus, the revered one, and supreme command over the most important provinces and all the legions. Rome had an emperor, but he was merely the princeps, the first citizen. The monarchy had arrived, draped in the robes of republican tradition. The Julio-Claudian dynasty had begun, ushering in the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of Roman peace. Augustus, the founder of the empire, reigned for over 4 decades, bringing unprecedented stability and prosperity. Yet he could not conquer the one weakness that would plague his entire dynasty: a secure biological heir. His reign was haunted by premature deaths. His grandsons, Gaius and Lucius, groomed for the throne, both died young. His own bloodline was failing. Faced with a devastating lack of options, Augustus was forced to look to the family of his wife, Livia, the Claudian line. The political alliance of the Julii and the Claudii was formalized when Augustus adopted his stepson, Tiberius Claudius Nero. This adoption was a necessity, not a choice. Tiberius, reigned AD 14 to 37, was a brilliant general and capable administrator, but he was also deeply reserved, resentful, and utterly unsuited for the delicate political theater of the Principate. Tiberius hated the Senate, and they hated him. He retreated to the island of Capri, ruling Rome by distant decree, creating an atmosphere of paranoia that led to the vicious Maestas, treason trials. This suspicion was exploited by his praetorian prefect, Lucius Aelius Sejanus, who ruthlessly purged rivals within the Julian line, clearly attempting to seize power for himself. Tiberius finally orchestrated Sejanus's. The dynasty's trajectory then spun into madness with Tiberius's successor, his grandnephew Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, better known as Caligula, reigned AD 37 to 41. Caligula inherited a vast treasury and a willing senate, but after a mysterious illness early in his reign, he rapidly descended into megalomania. He wasted the imperial fortune, humiliated the Senate, and demanded to be worshipped as a living god. The stories, while possibly exaggerated by biased historians, cemented the image of the Julio-Claudian line descending into dangerous, excessive decadence. Caligula's madness was violently concluded in AD 41, when he was murdered by his own Praetorian Guard, an act that established the guards as the true kingmakers of Rome, forever removing the Senate's pretense of control. In the ensuing chaos, the guards found a forgotten man hiding behind a curtain. Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, Claudius, reigned AD 41 to 54, mocked his entire life for his physical infirmities, a limp and a stammer. Claudius was a lifelong scholar who proved to be an unlikely genius ruler. He reformed the imperial bureaucracy, using educated freedmen to administer the empire efficiently, and launched the successful conquest of Britain in AD 43, the first major expansion since Augustus. However, the private life of the Claudian court remained fatally unstable. Claudius was dominated and eventually controlled by his wives, most notably his ruthless niece, Agrippina the Younger, who poisoned him with mushrooms to secure the throne for her own son, the final adopted Julian heir, Nero. The transfer of power, once orchestrated with the stately precision of Augustus, was now decided by backroom deals, hidden daggers, and a dish of deadly fungi. the dynasty was accelerating towards its dramatic final reckoning. The final Julio-Claudian emperor was Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, who took the name Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, reigned AD 54 to 68. He ascended to the throne at the age of 17, marking the end of the dynasty's gradual shift away from the Julian bloodline towards the Claudian. Initially, his rule was promising, guided by the philosopher Seneca the Younger and the prefect Burrus. The first 5 years were hailed as a period of mild, responsible governance. But Nero's true passion was not governance. It was art, music, and the stage. He increasingly viewed the imperial throne as a platform for his own artistic vanity. His descent was fast and total. He eliminated his mother, Agrippina, who had brought him to power, staging an elaborate but failed attempt to drown her, before finally having her executed. He ordered the murder of his own stepbrother, Britannicus, and executed his philosophical mentor, Seneca. The defining event of his reign was the Great Fire of Rome in AD 64. The massive inferno raged for 9 days, destroying 2/3 of the city. While it is unlikely Nero started the fire, he handled the aftermath disastrously. He was rumored to have played his lyre while watching the city burn, and then, seizing the cleared land, began construction on his extravagant new palace, the Domus Aurea, Golden House. The public outrage was palpable, the rumors of arson unstoppable. To deflect the blame, Nero needed a scapegoat. He famously targeted an obscure and disliked Eastern sect, the Christians, initiating the first major state-sponsored persecution. This act was not motivated by religious zeal, but by political necessity, an attempt to redirect the people's fury toward a vulnerable minority. Nero's extravagance, combined with his theatrical self-obsession and cruelty, eroded the patience of the Senate, the military, and the people. When the influential governors of Gaul and Hispania, backed by their legions, rose in open revolt, the end was swift. The Praetorian Guard, whose power Caligula had inadvertently established and Claudius had utilized, turned against their emperor. Declared a public enemy by the Senate, Nero fled Rome. In AD 68, hiding in a villa outside the city, the last of the Julio-Claudians committed suicide, reputedly with the pathetic and hubristic cry. With his death, the dynastic line of the Julii and the Claudii was extinguished. The empire instantly dissolved into civil war, the chaotic year of the 4 emperors, as various generals fought to fill the monumental vacuum of power. The Julio-Claudian dynasty ruled for 95 years. They demonstrated the incredible heights Rome could reach under a single, brilliant ruler like Augustus, securing the Pax Romana and transforming the world. But they also proved that the Republic's ancient fear of kings was justified. Their family history became Rome's destiny, a dramatic cycle where world-altering genius and unprecedented prosperity were inseparable from devastating madness, paranoia, and unprecedented madness, and the corrosive flaw of arbitrary power. The families who built Rome ultimately ensured that the fate of the vast, glorious empire would forever rest on the fickle, flawed character of a single man. Nero's suicide in AD 68 plunged Rome into the chaotic year of the 4 emperors, a brutal period where 4 different generals claimed the throne in quick succession. The question wasn't just who would rule, but could Rome survive without a Caesar? We'll explore that question in our next documentary, focusing on the rise of the Flavian dynasty, a rough and tumble military family who brought order out of Nero's chaos and built the Colosseum. To ensure you don't miss the story of Vespasian and Titus, subscribe now and turn on notifications. We'll see you on the battlefield.